Humans are apex predators. We have the ability to stand upright, and most of us are capable of rational thought. Therefore, we are considered a primary apex predator at the top of the food chain. And according to the Bible, God gave us dominion over all the fish that swim in the sea, the birds that fly in the sky, and all the animals that creep and crawl on the ground. But sometimes we don't do a very good job with that responsibility. The Burmese python is also an apex predator, and in Florida, it is invasive, and it is so destructive, it is the state's top priority of all invasive animals targeted for removal. There are an estimated 300,000 Burmese pythons in the Florida Everglades, and they are eating everything. And because they are not part of our food chain and of our ecosystem, nothing preys on them, so they have free range. Their only predators are humans. But first, how did we get here? In the 1970s, the first Burmese pythons were spotted in the Florida Everglades, widely believed to be the product of irresponsible pet owners who dumped them out. But then in 1992, Hurricane Andrew smashed into South Florida, destroying 50,000 homes and a Burmese python breeding facility. Over 600 of the snakes escaped and made their way into the Florida Everglades, and it has been game on ever since. The Burmese python breeds once a year, every year, and she can carry anywhere from 40 to a record 122 eggs. And those 122 eggs came out of this big girl. She was captured last August in Naples, and she is the new Florida state record. She was over 18 feet long and weighed 215 pounds. And in addition to those 144 eggs, she had deer hooves in her belly. The Burmese python is an ambush predator. It lays in wait by a body of water, waits for prey to come by, quickly bites it, constricts it, and consumes it whole. And as you can see, it can eat prey that is actually bigger than itself. This is a sample diet of what one Burmese python can eat in the first 5 to 7 years of its life. And this will help it grow to approximately 13 feet. So you can see our problem. When I was a kid growing up in the Everglades, we saw animals everywhere all the time. Deer, bears, raccoons, you name it, we saw it. In the last 9 months that Gary and I have been going to the Florida Everglades, and we go generally once or twice a month and spend the whole weekend, we've seen 4 mammals. We've seen 2 coyotes, 1 raccoon, and 1 squirrel. The bobcats had an 87% decline in population in the Florida Everglades. The raccoon, a 97% decline. The possum, a 99% decline, and you can see where I'm going with these numbers. The fox and the marsh rabbit, a 100% decline in the Florida Everglades. They effectively no longer exist. And we know it's the python doing this because the ones that are captured and necropsies are being performed have these animals in their bellies. Other predators are also suffering. The coyote has had a 50% decline in the Florida Everglades. They are moving to other areas because there's no food out there. The Florida panther, which is endangered, is showing up on game cameras to be very skinny and undernourished. Even mosquitoes are being impacted by the Burmese python. Recent studies have shown that because there are no mammals in the Everglades, mosquito populations are moving, and they're moving to more populated areas that include people. So the next time you're in South Florida and you think the mosquitoes are the worst they've ever been, you can blame the Burmese python. I did my first GORUCK event in December of 2014, and over the next several years, I've done over 40 events, HTL, some star courses. Emily and I, we did beach beta a few years ago, and I'm pretty sure we almost died at least 3 times that weekend. But then in 2020, I decided it was time to go for the Tier 1 events. So I trained for pretty much all of 2020, and then in 2021, I went into team assessment. And after 11 hours, I was a voluntary withdrawal, also known as quitting, for some pretty significant back pain, and found out later that I had a pre-existing condition I didn't know I had. So for the rest of 2021, I really had a hard time getting back in the groove. I didn't want to work out, I didn't want to ruck, I didn't have the discipline, I just didn't care anymore. And then when Sandlot was announced for 2022, I thought, this will be my reset. I'm gonna go reconnect with some GRTs, do some events, and kind of get back into things. And I was sitting in this audience listening to the FIT panel, and Kelly Starrett was on that panel. And I asked the question, as you get older, how do you continue to level up? The injuries come more often, the recovery takes longer, so what do you do? And his answer kind of surprised me. He said, you don't. At some point, you give up the competition and you give up the things that are really becoming too hard on your body. And you train for adventure. And he used the example that he and his wife now work out and train for whitewater rafting. And so over the few months after Sandlot, Gary and I talked about that. And we realized we were kind of already doing it. We love camping. We love anything outside. We had been hunting the Burmese python a few times. We were terrible at it. We hadn't even seen one. I don't know how, but there's 300,000 of them out there. So we decided that this was something we wanted to be serious about and that we wanted to make a difference and be part of the solution. Because you see, hunting the Burmese python in the wintertime is done during the day. We're walking through the Everglades with alligators, venomous snakes, and anything else that might be out there. Sometimes there's no trails. Sometimes we're walking in knee-deep water to tree islands looking for nests. We're turning over rocks. We're turning over logs. And sometimes we're miles from any other people, and we have no cell phone service. So our land navigation skills and our first aid skills really have to be on point. But catching a Burmese python requires strength and functional fitness. It's an apex predator. It fights back to defend itself. That is python swamp man on the left, and that is python huntress on the right. They are contract hunters, which I'll talk about in a minute. But as you can see, those snakes are trying to wrap around them to defend themselves. And not only do they fight back, but they bite. The Burmese python has 2 rows of teeth on the top and 1 row of teeth on the bottom. It's slightly curved like a cat's, so the risk of infection is very high if we get bitten. So obviously, first aid kits are very important for us when we're out there. And so in an effort to be good at this and to be one of the sheepdogs, we needed a mentor. And I found Tom Rahill. Tom is a contract hunter, and he is also a researcher for the state. And when he's not doing those things, he has a program called the Swamp Apes, and he takes out veterans. Because Tom understands, like many people, that nothing is going to match the excitement and the adrenaline of war for a combat soldier when they come home. But if they can find a new purpose, a new mission, especially one that lets them use skills they've already attained, they have fewer symptoms of PTSD, to include fewer flashbacks, fewer nightmares, and fewer panic attacks. And Tom is actually working with the VA to become a certified and accepted therapy for PTSD, for veterans with PTSD. We love Tom. We can call him anytime, day or night, to talk about python movement, weather patterns, whatever it is. He's a wonderful source of information. Gary's a combat veteran. I have 20 years of secondary trauma built up from working in child welfare and seeing the worst that humanity can throw at its children. And sometimes the walls start to kind of cave in on us. But after weekends, looking at these sunsets from our tent and being outside and hunting and doing something to affect a change for the environment, we sleep better, we argue less, we feel better in general. Until he does something like this. You have no idea. He does it perfectly every time. I can take a picture, and at the last second, that hand comes up. And those are the days I consider leaving him out there. So what is a contract hunter? A contract hunter is paid by the state to hunt the Burmese python. There are 100 contract hunters in the state. We are currently on the waiting list. They are very coveted positions. They get paid by the hour for hunting, and they get paid by the foot for the snakes they bring in. They must bring their snakes in alive, and then the state decides whether they're going to euthanize those snakes and then give them back to the hunters to do what they want with the skins, or they release them back into the wild with microchips in order to follow them for research. So very quickly, I'm going to introduce you to some of the more popular contract hunters. They're all on Instagram. These are all their Instagram names. They're great fun to watch. They are very knowledgeable and very experienced. This is Python Wildman. Some of you may have heard of him. He has a History Channel show called Guardian of the Glades. He's also been on Swamp People, and he's in the process right now of creating another documentary. These are the Everglades python snatchers. They are twin brothers. They bring in a ton of big snakes. They are out there all the time, and they have just a really great amount of experience. This is Python Cowboy. He's very well known. Some of you may have heard of him as well. He has a very lucrative business down in South Florida hunting all kinds of invasive species, not just the Burmese python. He has contracts with some of the local governments to kind of clean up the golf course and stuff down in South Florida for iguanas, invasive geese, feral hogs, Burmese pythons, you name it. That's J Camp 17 on the left. He's a Miccosukee Indian, and that's Python Larry on the right. He's been a contract hunter for just over a year. And that's Donna Khalil, and yes, that snake is alive. Fortunately for us, the Burmese python only has one functioning lung, so it runs out of stamina very quickly, and they actually become quite docile once they are worn out. Donna is probably the most experienced person in the field today. She has been doing this for many, many years, and she has a wonderful documentary on PBS if you get the opportunity to watch it. So if you're not a contract hunter, who are you? You're everyone else. Anyone can hunt the Burmese python anytime, anywhere, on public land. No special licenses or permits are required. There are a couple of differences. Gary and I do not get paid. We go out there on our own dime, and we do this because we believe in what it is. And the other thing is, we are not allowed to transport the Burmese python alive. It is against the law to transport a Burmese python alive in the state of Florida unless you are a contracted hunter. They are a prohibited species. And so we must kill our snakes on the spot. And that is not something we take lightly. This is taking a life, and we are well aware of that. But this is a problem. They don't belong here. It's not their fault they're here, but humans are the only ones that can take care of this problem. And that killing is done in a two-step process. The first step is called rendering it unconscious. For us, that includes hitting it in the head with a fish bat. Gary does that part. The second step is called pithing. Right where you see the thumb on the base of that skull, basically you stick a knife into that area of the head and you stir it up and basically scrambles the brain. This ensures instantaneous death. Gary does that part too. I'm the spotter. So again, they are protected by animal cruelty laws. So we can't drag them behind the truck. We can't set them on fire. And if you chop their heads off, snakes have very small brains, so they can actually live for anywhere from a few minutes to a few hours. And they can still bite during that time, and they can still feel pain. And again, we don't ever want these animals to suffer in this process. So what do we do with them? Unfortunately, the Burmese python in Florida cannot be eaten. It has levels of mercury that are entirely too high to be safe for human consumption. Many of the contract hunters have businesses where they are selling the products to other companies to make, or they make their own products and sell them. My dad is a taxidermist down in Naples. He is seeing a lot more of them coming into the shop because the numbers are they're starting to show up in neighborhoods. So a lot more people are becoming aware that these are issues, and that's a very popular thing to do with them. I had nowhere to put this picture, but I couldn't leave it out. There's no filter on this picture. This is what a Burmese python looks like when it's about to shed and you shine a light on it. We saw a water moccasin a few weeks ago in the Everglades that was actually about to shed, and it was the same thing. And it's just a beautiful phenomenon. I wanted to share that. So how hard is it? You would think that finding a 12, a 14, or a 16-foot snake would be no problem. And I've already explained what it's like hunting the python during the day. But at night, sometimes you get lucky and it's right in the middle of the road, but not usually. We spend hours and hours and hours driving roads, driving trails, driving levees, looking in the water, looking in culverts, looking on the side of the road with a spotlight, driving 5 to 7 miles an hour, the windows down, 90 degrees at night with the bugs. And that's generally what the view looks like. And how many of you saw that snake in the last slide? Did anybody see it? You saw it? A couple of you saw it? So this is 3 feet from the side of the road. That's the same snake. So that shows you they have adapted to our environment to where their camouflage is just flawless. And that's what makes this such a challenging endeavor. So here's the thing. We are at a critical point in time when it comes to the Burmese python in Florida. Their numbers continue to grow. They continue to adapt to the environment, and their camouflage has just become just amazing. We're seeing differences in the skins every year of the hatchlings. And the Burmese python hunters are basically the sheepdogs of the ecosystem of the Florida Everglades. There's no other ecosystem in the world like the Florida Everglades. And it's up to us to protect the animals that make up that ecosystem. And if we lose this battle, we stand to lose something that we may never get back. And so look, not everybody wants to or can go out and hunt a Burmese python. But as a primary apex predator in the world, you have a responsibility to the planet, to the animals on it, and to the people around you. So go outside, find something or someone to protect, and be a sheepdog. Thank you.